Amanda, do we need to text Ben and Mary to let them know it's the original Zoom?
Mary's coming right here.
You mind changing my name, Amanda, or do I have the ability to again?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine.
I don't see Ben.
Okay, I'm sending him a message.
Okay.
Oh, there he is.
My email was messed up. I was searching for the link.
We have now completed all the items on our agenda for today. I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Action was taken in closed session. Do we have to say that?
Do we need to, since it's personnel evaluation? No.
Oh, you just need that there was no action.
No action. No action was taken in the meeting regarding the town manager's evaluation.
And I re-motion to adjourn the meeting.
Barbara?
There it is. Yes.
David?
Yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Ben?
Yes.
Okay. The meeting is adjourned, and now if we can take a short break before we start our budget work session. Is everybody okay with taking 5 minutes to?
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. 5 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, sounds like a plan.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm going to turn my video off, Linda, but I'm back. I'm just turning it off because I'm eating. When everyone else is back, don't assume I'm not here. You can start.
Thank you for letting me know.
And I'll mute it so you don't have to hear me chew.
Is everybody that I can't see back online? I know David isn't, but oh, there he is. Greg, Ben, Paige.
I'm here.
Wait. Okay, thank you, Greg.
Ben's coming on right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
So we'll call this budget work session to order. And sorry, we're into the noon hour. If we were meeting in person, we would be having pizza. But since we can't, I will let Paige get us started on this. Is Lynn joining us?
She's coming on.
Okay.
Okay, so I think the main thing out of this meeting is to look at where we are to date,
Hey.
discuss some changes from last year's budget, look at where we are preliminarily, and look at our budget priorities and deficit discussion. And we need input from you all on how to move forward. I'm going to shut my door.
Hold on 1 second. I'm getting there. I'm already sharing.
Okay, so this is our last budget work session before a draft will be sent to you all on April the 20th. April the 29th, we'll have a budget work session. That's at 9 a.m. That's an irregular meeting to review the draft budget. And we'll also talk about the fee schedule. The budget will formally be presented to you all May the 13th. And we have a tentative council work session, May the 13th, with the public hearing for the budget being May the 27th, and hopefully adopting June the 10th. So that's where we are in the budget process. This is our last real meeting before the draft, or our last budget work session before the draft budget. And then you have the agenda up before you. We're going to do a revaluation analysis, look at the audit RFP contract, the financial condition, talk about the effect of the tax increase. We have a little bit of an update on information that's available on the American Rescue Plan, and then discussions and questions. So, Lynn, do you want to talk about the revaluation analysis?
Yes. Do we have that? Hold on just a second. Okay, so we have this reevaluation analysis that we've worked on, and Paige actually shared this with the board a couple of weeks ago. And we asked for any input or questions, and we had several that responded. So we appreciate that. I do have a couple of updates on this from when you previously reviewed it, and I'll go over that. But we can just go down through. We received the assessed value from the Jackson County Tax Assessor on January the 29th. And the value is close to 4.36 million on the value. We have to, the old age exemptions are not included in this, so that would need to be subtracted out of that. And that was just an estimate from the previous year. Also, because not all of the properties within Sylva city limits is 100% in, we have to do an adjustment each year for the proration of the properties that are in versus what part is out. So we subtract that out. And then we have the estimated appeal releases, and this is what's been changed since the last version of this you received. We do have a little bit of information from the tax assessor. As of 3/18, she indicated there has been 44 appeals granted, which would equate to approximately 15,600 at the current tax rate. There has also been a submission by Lowe's for a rather large appeal, but that has not been reviewed at this point. And of course, there are circumstances where it could go to the Board of Adjustments or even the Property Tax Commission. So there's still possibilities of appeals out there. So instead of having the 5% that we originally had on this, we've reduced that to 2.75%. So we subtract out the appeals, and then we get an estimated real property value. From that, I subtracted out what we had from the previous year, which is different than what would be reflected at the county, because we do have the prorations that we have to take into consideration. So what we were looking for here is the real property difference between the 2021 and the 2020. And so you can see that the 53,210,484. Now, we applied the current tax rate to see what kind of real property difference money-wise that would equate to, and that is 226,144, which is percentage-wise is a 14.5% increase. However, that does include new construction, which the new construction is something we would receive anyway, whether we had a reevaluation or not. So we don't want to really take that into consideration, because that would be our normal growth between the two years. So that's also been subtracted out to give us a 192,822 at the current tax rate. And then we cannot budget 100% of that, because we have to rely on what we collected in the previous year, collection rate wise. So then that would drop that down to 188,850, which is a 12.42% increase when you do not consider the new construction in there. And then just at the bottom there, I just divided it out to see like a percent dollar amount, which is roughly about $4,500 at the current tax rate. Just a couple of reminders: if the tax rate was reduced or increased, that will affect our vehicle taxes and personal property taxes and utility taxes. Because they're all based on the collection or the percentage, the tax rate. Also, since this is a reevaluation year, we will have to do a revenue neutral rate that's required by the state. We will not want to calculate that until we're sure about our appeals. And also, they typically update that on their website. It's a formula that we plug in numbers to in May. So that'll be coming, but we will have to calculate that out and report that on our budget ordinance.
Question?
Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I do. So is that
Dan?
you say in May that they're going to have that finalized? Is that like a like required by law that they have that sorted out by a certain date, or not?
The revenue neutral?
Well, I guess that in order to get that to our revenue neutral, you just said we have to have the kind of final figures on these appeals and that kind of thing, right? Is that correct?
I can't hear him.
Oh, sorry. Oh, wait. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much
Okay,
better.
great. So the question was, is there a fixed date that all these appeals have to be wrapped up to find out, when, or could that drag on? I mean, will we know in May how everything goes?
The tax assessor indicated that she should have a good update for us by May on at least the Board of Adjustments for the county. Now, if it goes on to the Property Tax Commission, then that can get held up for quite a while, but she can let us know more. I've been touching base with her every couple of weeks to get an update. So she indicated that she felt like we would know a lot more by May.
And I guess my other question would be if, thank you for doing the analysis you're doing here. Just to know, I guess we'll need to know if there's going to be some outstanding, it just, again, every penny matters and
Right.
decisions. And so if, we'll have to go on using a figure, like the lowest figure, and maybe, if something's not resolved, I just want to make sure we don't make our decisions on a figure and all of a sudden the figure goes down. If the figure goes up, then fine. But, and also how much that might be.
Right. By the next meeting, I will, of course, try to have another update and we can adjust that. Currently, it's reflecting about a $50,000 amount for the estimated appeals.
Okay,
And
great.
as I
Thanks.
said, we know we've got the 15.6 that would come out of that. And then the lows, based on what I was looking at, that could be close to $9,000, but that doesn't mean that will be appealed. And then once they make their decision at the assessor's level, it can still be appealed to the Board of Adjustments. So all I know to say is that we'll just try to keep it as updated as we know. But by May, we should have a good idea of what we're looking at.
Okay, great. Thank you.
David, you have a question?
Yeah, a couple quick questions. The formula for calculating the revenue neutral rate, is that provided by the state, and does it take out the new construction?
Yes, it is provided by the state, and I've sent two emails because what I'm looking at, it only has 4, 6, and 8 years for the reevaluation. And so with ours being 5 years, there's not anything. So there's not anything in there. And I've tried, you can't go in and look at the formulas and I was going to try to change it to just the 5 years from the 6 years. But it's protected, so I can't do any of that. But yes, it does take into consideration certain things. So the new construction would be subtracted out of that. But I've not had much luck of anybody getting back with me.
And I also wonder too if it will also calculate how that revenue neutral rate is also impacts the other taxes we collect that are based on that rate. Because right now it's 12.42% essentially if you take out new construction. So if we decreased our tax rate by 12.42%, we would collect the same amount of taxes from those same properties that were here 5 years ago. But that amount that it went up, the 12.42%, doesn't include the increase in values of people's cars and things like that, which didn't follow that. So I assume that will also take that into account, so that number will be lower.
Yes, it does. Years ago, when they started doing this revenue neutral rate, it was the first year that happened, we had a reevaluation year. And there was no formula or anything fixed for that. But I called the state and I'm like, we need all of this to be taken into consideration, because truly you could be cutting yourself, by not considering these other factors in. And so when they eventually came out with the formulas and stuff, that was taken into consideration, which it should be, because it truly would not reflect the correct amount if you cut your other taxes. So yes, it should include that.
Any other questions for Lynn? Okay, continue. Page, Lynn, are you finished or?
I'm going to go over the RFP for the audit.
Okay,
It's on the next screen. Okay, so last year at budget time, several of the board members indicated an interest in putting out an RFP for our audit service. So I actually did that back in February, and we received the results last Friday. And basically, I sent out a total of 8 RFPs, and we received a response from 3 of those. And I have summarized on here the different proposals. Burleson and Early, of course, is our current auditors, and they came in 18,280. Sheila Gahagan out of Clyde was 22,500. And then Carter CPA out of Asheville was 25,585. So I recommend that we stay with our current auditor, Burleson and Early. Now that will be, currently we've been paying this past year, it was 16,500. So it did go up, but it's still lower than the other 2. And any questions, this will be brought up at the next board meeting for a vote.
any questions of Lynn on that? Okay,
Lynn, thank you for doing that RFP. I know it was a lot of work for you. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for looking into those numbers for us.
Welcome.
I think it's good to review these every now and then. Bronson Early has also been doing TWASs every year, and we finally decided to do an RFP as well this year, just to every now and then see what else is out there. But that's good. They came in the lowest, still high though.
I think I think it's like just a matter of less work, because they've got it plugged in. Things don't change that much per year, and it's just in their program. They just tweak numbers, and I think it's probably why they're cheaper.
Right. Well, we're very pleased with their services. We're just very happy with what they do. So that's good.
Paige.
Yes. Okay. The next thing is an update on our financial condition. So we'll look at the budget to date, starting with the revenues. And like any other year, the first column of numbers is what's estimated in our current year budget, or what's estimated in when I say current, I mean, I'm going to change that. What is estimated in our upcoming budget is the current year budget. And then we're estimating the differences. You've also got the amended columns out to the side on the right. I'm mainly looking at the the original and the estimated difference. So I'm just going to point out a few things to you that will be of interest, and feel free to stop me as I'm going if you have any questions. So on taxes, the estimated, the original difference there is the change in the revaluation. That's at a tax rate of 42.5 cents. Dropping down to rental vehicles, that's decreased by 17,000 because less vehicles were rented during COVID. Then going farther down to interest on investments, there we estimated low last year based off of what other surrounding towns were doing and advice from the League of Municipalities on interest. We're moving that back up for a higher interest rate. The Main Street program shows an increase of $20,300. That's because we're having 2 Greening at the Mountains festivals in 1 year. We'll drop that back down next year to 1. Interesting to know how much that costs. Sale of telecommunications has a decrease of $4,500. That's a continued decrease from people canceling their landlines.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, just on
Yes.
Greening Up, like that's our cost. Do we have estimates about like what that brings in?
Oh, I'm sorry. That is the estimate of the revenue.
That's the revenue, right? Okay, sorry, thanks.
Yeah, well, you'll see that in Main Street, but it is basically the same thing. It makes about between 15 to 20,000. 15 to 20,000. Sometimes it's as low as 8 to 10. So we're going off of the low end of 10,000. It's just going to be a different year, and I don't want to estimate it too high.
It looks like you estimated at 20,000 per festival.
For two festivals.
Okay. It says 43,000. There's other revenues in the Main Street
Yes.
program? Oh,
Um,
gotcha. Okay, I'm with.
Okay, good. Local video programming has a decrease of 1,500. That just drops every year. Part of that streaming services. Franchise tax on power is another decrease of 1,500. That's an estimated decrease based off of our current revenue. You've got 3 sales tax and hold harmless that have increases. Our prior year estimates were decreased from COVID projections, and these estimates are based off of current trends. PAL bill has a decrease of $8,200. That's people traveling less. ABC Rehab Education has a minor increase of $1,000. We go to the next slide. Sales tax refund has an increase of $3,360. That's based off of what we've purchased this year. Fund balance appropriations, you'll see the column to the left, the estimated has $52,000. And if you look at the very bottom, well, let's actually hold that one for a second, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Sorry. You see our general government and recreation, separation, and fire department all coming out to total the revenue. Under grants and proceeds, $400,000, that's the American Rescue Plan. We'll talk more about that later on during the work session, but it's going to be divided over 2 years. So under total general fund budget, that's $4,852,759. Total appropriated fund balance is $52,000. Now, I'm not suggesting that we appropriate from fund balance this year, because if we appropriate it for revaluation, we would likely have to appropriate it every year. So down here below it, this is what I'm recommending for fund balance appropriation. Or what I'm suggesting makes up that number. This is where I think we're short. I think we need to be putting aside $20,000 a year for the 107 sidewalks. If we do that throughout the 5 years of the reevaluation, that will get us to construction and the higher estimate of what we needed for sidewalks. The fire department has an increase during the revaluation also. And that shows, we plan for it this year, but it really shows up more next year when we receive the revenue from the other parts of the district. I put in the restroom feasibility study at 7,000, and because that was high on the board's priority list. And then I was shocked to learn that it was time for a pay study again. It's been 5 years. So the cost of that was 7,000 in 2017, and we implemented the results of it the following year. There's some other additional items I know that we've got coming up. I've mentioned our Municode recodification would be in a future year of around a $10,000 cost. So I pretty much see this 52,000 as our shortfall based off of things I feel like the board needs to plan and account for moving forward. Is that clear?
Yeah. Hey, a question, when does money go, this is just a learning question. When does money go into the fund balance? How do we grow the fund balance?
So money that is left over at year end rolls back into the fund balance.
So did we have some go in this year?
Lynn, do you want to talk about that? You'll explain it better than I will.
We're not completely to the end of the fiscal year.
Right. It rolls back after June the 30th.
Okay, so typically, it rolls in if we go based on a municipality our size, the fund balance, an average fund balance is our policy. So if it goes over we get a report each year that tells that. So if it goes over that, then that money goes into our capital reserve fund. This particular year, it did not, because we had y'all to board approve it, and it's earmarked right now for Allen Street, because the way the capital reserve fund was set up was more for like vehicles and that type of thing, not necessarily repairs, capital repairs. So currently that money is it's earmarked, and once we do the capital project fund for Allen Street, that money will be used for that.
But we
So-
budget for fund balance.
Go
We
ahead.
like budget, we say, we're gonna put this much money in fund balance every year. That's a budget item, or no? That's the part that I don't, so it's just extra.
No, it's not a budgeted item. Once the audit is completed, then I know how much is above, and that money is board approved to either be put in the capital reserve fund, or if it's below the estimated percentage, then it just rolls in. It just goes into the fund balance. Our accounting system is set up that way.
Gotcha. And I guess I'm just, my question, really too goes to, like, if, the league says your fund balance should be this, and we follow their recommendations. And I just, drawing down on the fund balance, like in order, it's got to get up somehow to maintain that level. And I just wonder how we do that. Like, where does that come from?
Primarily savings within our departments and being conservative with our spending.
David, do you have a question?
Yes, I'm a little confused here. So this was a chart of revenues, and it's showing that our estimated at this point for our budget for this coming year is $690,000 more we're anticipating in revenue over our budgeted amount from 2021. But I'm curious, we haven't done expenses yet. I guess we'll kind of get to that. Where are you getting this, like that we're short $52,000, and this is what would need to come from fund balance to cover that?
Okay, so I think that'll make more sense when we're talking about expenses. The reason I'm mentioning this fund balance appropriation here is because that comes as a revenue. So,
right, you're showing the appropriation of $52,000 from fund balance in the revenue column because we're about to hear why there's a shortfall.
yes.
Gotcha.
So these are the things that I feel like we've talked about and prioritized that are not included in the budget. And I'm essentially saying, if we put in the things the board has prioritized, with the 107 sidewalk, the restroom feasibility study, the pay study, or looking at pretty much the next few years, we have about a $10,000 cost that's going to come into play, whether it's through ordinances or salary study, 107. Anyways, I'm pointing that out here to say that I think we are going into this budget about $52,000 short. We also have not added in the extra personnel for the police officer and part-time sanitation. I want to figure out where we go forward from this, but you can see those costs at the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, so I'm curious. We're $690,000 up in revenue, so I'm curious to see where the rest of that money went, and we still need 52. So I guess that's the next slide, huh?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, what is the estimated FD increase due to revaluation? I'm sorry,
It was 200.
No. What's the $18,000 there in our fund balance appropriation detail? Like the $18,000, what's FD like?
Fire department.
Right, that's what I thought. So, oh, I see. Right, because the fire department also has to pay taxes, property taxes, or
no, a certain percentage of the revaluation goes off of the the contribution goes to the fire department based on the tax rate.
Paige, can I address something to David's question? So of that 690,000, we have put 400,000 in for the American Rescue Plan. So that's a big bulk of it. We went ahead and put that because that's an estimate of what we're going to receive, but you'll see it on the expenditure side. It's just under non-departmental right now is a grant revenue until y'all talk about it and it's decided how we might be able to use that. But I just felt like it needed to be in there because it will be budgeted for in some way.
and so Lynn, you balance it out. That's what you just said. Basically, you're adding it here, but you're taking it out in the revenue side.
Exactly.
I mean, sorry, in the expenditure side. Yeah.
Can you go back a slide? I wanted to make note of the ABC sales revenue and I missed that somehow.
Yes, it's in there for 160,000.
Thank you. Got it.
Paige, can I ask a question about that? That's what we're guaranteed to receive.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so it could be over and above that.
Yes.
So, where did the 400,000 figure come from? The federal government or the county or?
So it's the federal bill that was passed the 11th. It has $800,000 that's what's projected to come to Sylva. And it'll be received over 2 years.
Wow. And I don't really want to get too far into the weeds here, but what does the $7,000 restroom feasibility study entail? Like where it can go? What is that going to recommend to us?
So, well, that was something that you all prioritized. Spring Street is the only street with both water and sewer. I think that that's probably the best location for it, but we look at a design that would be a large part of the feasibility. Jake, do you want to add anything?
No, at this time, I don't have anything to add. It could be, I know if you want it in the downtown area, that I agree with Paige, that's really the only place you could do it. There's water and sewer at Bridge Park too, but I think that isn't a compromise that y'all would be willing to make from what you've told me before. So,
Wait, what? I mean, I think that the project on the east side of Bridge Park is a perfect place, or at least a perfect candidate for a place. If we're going to redo that space and take it from a gravel lot to something that is an amenity for the town, I think that is an excellent spot for something like that.
right. And combining that with the green infrastructure improvements, I think would end up a lot cheaper in the long run, and also possibly be grant funded, not be coming out of fund balance.
All right. So with the restroom feasibility study, like maybe tell us like, it's going to cost you this much to do it right there on Spring Street, and it's kind of an awkward location, or it's going to cost you this much to do it over here on a plan that's already sort of being developed.
It could. I mean, it would depend on the scope of work of the feasibility study and what exactly it is you're trying to figure out. I can tell you from a purely construction standpoint, it would be much simpler to do it at Bridge Park than it would be on Spring Street. Impact fees from TWASA would be similar. So then you'd be looking at design fees and construction costs at that point. And if when you talk about a feasibility study, I think that needs to be a little better defined. Say, I mean, anything is feasible with enough money. So
I mean, that's what I would like to look at is like, we're going to spend the $7,000, and it sounds like we could do this at Bridge Park. We could tuck it into a corner of Bridge Park that, doesn't impact the other features that this amenities is going to have. So I don't, it's kind of an overlapping, and it seems like that could dovetail into a discussion of the Bridge Park instead.
right. And the reason that hasn't been brought up thus far is because I've been, a main street restroom is what we've been focusing on. It does kind of put you out of the action if you're at Bridge Park, but Bridge Park is also the hub of most of our festivals too.
I think that we need to start to encourage people to, use those parking lots. I mean, we're going to have to, at some point, promote that because downtown is getting packed.
Having a public restroom at the Bridge Park versus the location I suggested would encourage people to park over there, which I like.
Well,
So-
I'll also point out that the Bridge Park green infrastructure stuff is certainly not set in stone. It's a project that I think everybody supports, including myself, but we've just funded construction documents and early planning for that. It's a long way from actually happening. So I just want to make that clear too.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's, I was raising my hand, but the way the screen's set up, maybe no one's on me. So can we talk about this now, or do we need to talk about this? Because yeah, I want to talk about this. I want to change my vote.
Let's move that down to discussion and questions.
Okay,
I'm gonna add Bridge Park or
okay,
down
thanks.
to restroom.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the
No,
fight.
no,
No,
Greg and I
that
were
was
talking.
me.
Yeah, this makes so much more sense, but I'm happy to talk about it at a different bullet point.
Okay, then any other questions on the revenues?
No, but I'm very encouraged.
Advance to the expenditures. Okay, so the first increase you'll see is under administration. That's salary and benefits. The Main Street Program expenditure increase is $15,500. That's the extra Greenie at the Mountains Festival. So, David, to answer your question, we are budgeting for it to cost $15,500, but we're estimating low on the revenue for $10,000 because we don't know what it's going to make this year. Well, we never know what it's going to make, but with COVID, I think it's a very different year.
And that seems like a great estimate.
Okay. Professional services, this $2,280 increase is the audit contract. Police department has an increase, you'll see, of $218,060. 92,000 of this is vehicles. Generally, we pay for that out of capital reserves, but this year we are budgeting it into the police expenditures instead of a capital reserve appropriation, because these two vehicles primarily are going to be built into our budget, replacing 2 a year, as we've been doing. And then that'll leave capital reserves for public works vehicles, or when the occasional year that there are 3 patrol cars, which is very few and hopefully far between. The other amount of that increase is salaries and benefits. Street department, that $40,000, $684, that's primarily salaries and benefits. Both of those departments have a few increases that are minor in other line items, but the bulk of it is salary, benefit, insurance.
Question real quick. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, on the police department, the remaining that was salary increases was from the COLA and the merit increase we did mid-year.
Yes.
Gotcha.
The one that we did in January, and 2.5% is proposed for merit this year. And Amanda, can you remember the COLA off the top of your head? I'm sorry, I can't. Was it 1.7?
No, I will go look. I do not remember exactly.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, then the next one, PAL bill has a decrease of $8,200. That is less people traveling. So over the last year, less miles traveled. People are spending less on gas. So that's decreased. That's a projected decrease there. Planning has a decrease in $30,500. That's just due to we estimate having our land use plan complete by land use plan and zoning ordinance update completed by the end of June. Sanitation department has a decrease of $16,982. We will have the garbage truck paid off this year. Facility maintenance, a decrease of $2,488. Last year we purchased cameras, and this year we won't need to buy them again. Non-departmental has an increase of $23,777. Part of that is the restroom feasibility, the pay study, the increase in the ABC grant, and a liability insurance increase. Miscellaneous appropriations have an increase of $62,396. 25,000 of that is the separation allowance increase. 18,000 is the fire department from the revaluation. And the 28,000 is 107 sidewalks. The next thing that I want to point out is the fire department has a decrease of $10,695. Last year, Dillsboro had tax discoveries that that they will just be built into the taxes this year. And the only transfer from the capital reserves fund at the very bottom is $29,000. That's for the half-ton pickup truck for Public Works. So we're taking less from capital reserves because patrol cars are being paid out of the police department this year. So that makes up the expenditure increases and decreases. What questions do you all have?
Paige, the COLA was 1.4.
Thank you, sorry.
What was the date that we did the mid-year merit increase? And I think we did a COLA and merit increase, I think. When did you say that was? In March or in January?
We did a COLA that was effective July the 1st. And then was it the second meeting in January or the first meeting in February that we did the merit increase?
It was retro back to January 1st.
Okay.
Do you remember the date we did it? I'm trying to find my notes on it because it was a number I wanted to look at. Sorry,
Okay.
I know it's a pain.
Hold on just one second. All right.
Even the first meeting in February. Check February 11th.
Got too many screens open. So it was February the 11th.
February the 11th. Okay, thanks.
What other questions do you all have on expenditures?
Any questions?
Oh, yeah, sorry, the streetlights, what's the streetlights? Like, I thought we pay those off, are we paying those off, or what's that all about?
That's our monthly bills.
Oh, okay. That's just like monthly bills for like electricity, kind of basically?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be much decreased if we're all solar powered, just saying.
Okay, I have a question here. Sorry, I'm trying to get these notes to where I can see them. So when we discussed the merit increase, we said it was going to cost 6 months with a 2.5% increase would cost $17,533. Yes. Right, that's the number I'm seeing. So how did that equate to a increase of over $100,000 from the merit increase in police department and administration department?
So you have it last year, or what was proposed in January, and it's merit, so it carries from year to year. Then another one is proposed that would be effective July the 1st. Our salary study recommends 2.5% a year for merit. Then there's the COLA of 1.4%. So it might help you more to look at the amended versus original difference. But we've also, we're looking at increases projected for insurance costs and other benefits.
That's 10% of the budget. That seems odd.
Let me clarify one thing, David. That number is not just salary. That number also includes all of the matching benefits too. In total there. So that includes the increase in insurance and retirement and all of that as well.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
Any other questions? Paige, you want to?
Okay, so if there aren't any other questions on the expenditures, and as you all go through these and look at them closer, feel free to reach back out to us and we're happy to answer any questions. But at this point, I think what we need to know in order to move forward is to hear from the board on how, on the priorities that you want included in here that aren't included that you want in, or ones that are that you want to remove. And then we need to talk about what to do with additional personnel.
Any
All right.
questions or
Yeah,
whatever?
I guess I'll just jump in. I'm sorry, are we gonna still go talk about the bathrooms again or talk about
Yes,
that?
we're going to talk about the bathrooms at the end, after we talk about the American Rescue Plan and that section on discussion and questions. We'll pick the bathroom discussion back up.
So like,
So
will
you're
now be
asking,
would now be a good time to like bring up new things, or like if I've had different ideas that I wanted to bring up and talk about since the last time we got together, or when is a good time to talk about that?
We can do that now, or we can do that with discussion and questions, but main thing I want to get from you all is what we do between now and the draft budget.
I have one question. I would like to see the budget with the public works position and the police position added. What is that going to do to our budget?
Okay, so that would,
I know the totals that were on the
the
other
total
screen.
is $81,500. That's,
But does that include all those things that Amanda was talking about, all the extra
yes.
stuff we have to pay?
Yes, so I've not included that 81,500 in this budget. So pretty much what I'm saying is this budget here accomplishes what we're currently doing. Then that $52,000 that we're short for pretty much our upcoming needs over the revaluation. But I want to know what you all want to do about the additional personnel and anything else that you've prioritized that may or may not be included.
So I'm looking at our vote sheet, and we had, so tied in the wants category was the public restroom downtown feasibility study, which is included in the 52,000 from fund balance or raising taxes, if that's something we still want. Bridge park improvements was tied also for the highest in the wants category, and that we've funded for that study, correct?
Yes. Also, some of that could be Fisher Creek or water quality money that we could amend once we get farther with the construction documents.
Okay. And then another thing I'm seeing that was high was, but we didn't put a dollar amount on it was improvements to Bryson Park. So that would be a question that I would have is that something we want to work into this budget, or wait because we're going to be doing those repairs and not opening the park until we're done with those repairs?
My recommendation would be waiting because I think Allen Street is going to take a long time.
I agree. And I think it's it'd been nice to get that whole 800,000 from the government in 1 year, but they spread it out over 2 years. So that's also a good candidate for some of that money, that 800K. So I would say I'm okay with waiting to put that into the budget.
I agree with you, David.
Yeah, like definitely want to keep that on our radar and say, this is a really good candidate for some of the 400,000, but again, that could also just be we stick that 400 in I think you said capital reserves, and then that can be transferred out of there to something mid-year, no problem.
Absolutely. We'd probably sit it aside, leave it where Lynn has it, where it's when it's in its own line item, but guidance is going to be coming out on how you account for that. But I definitely think we need to keep improvements to Bryson Park on our radar.
And I will just say at the Southwest Commission meeting the other night, that Sarah Thompson does, there was somebody from Raleigh there, and they suggested that we wait. The state is going to be sending down money also because they have $5 billion left from the first stimulus, and they're going to have more. And they suggested we wait and see what might come from the state and save our monies to the end. And I would like to see us use that money for some of our infrastructure. Our sidewalks, our roads are terrible, and we're never going to get enough Powell bill money to fix them. But there'll probably be plenty of money there. But if you can get things fixed by somebody else, let them do it.
So Paige, would you mind scrolling back up to your recommended, additional stuff that wasn't funded, but that you had tentatively going from fund balance? Because I'm a little surprised, with this property reevaluation, I would think our revenue neutral rate would be to lower taxes. And if there's anything else we want funded in addition to what we funded last year, that would come at a tax increase from a lowered number. But what you have here is people's property values went up, our revenues have increased, but still, and we don't have enough money to cover, essentially our needs here that you've included with the sidewalk, the fire department increase, restroom feasibility and pay.
Correct. And the last couple of years, if you'll remember, COVID was different, but we have appropriated from fund balance those years. So pretty much what I see here is it's very close to balancing. It's close to balancing with the revaluation. I think we've got about 52,000 on top of current operations and what's been prioritized or what we know is coming up that there's not enough money for. And then the additional, our current budget is not adequate to add personnel. So we need to know where to go from here.
And I just want to point out that it's I'm looking at our list of the prior budget priorities too. I just want to point out that there's nothing else on there, right? We're this is it. This is all from our list that you're putting here, the chart we're looking at right now. So basically, the police officer and the part-time sanitation, that's it. Oh, I guess the restroom study, right?
Right.
Just to clarify. So we're not talking about, the mowing head or the sign entrance, or the pickup truck.
The pickup truck is in there, and the Polaris vehicle for Pinnacle Park is also in there, but that's Fisher Creek funds.
Yeah, okay, gotcha. So yeah, so I just like so the Polaris is so that would be not on our list anymore, right? It's taken care of. Is that what you're saying?
That's in this budget, as is the half-ton pickup truck.
Okay, good. So those get removed by the off our budget priority list. So looking at our budget priority list, we have with the part-time sanitation, the police officer are here. Bryson Park, we just talked about, and then we get down into our wants. And the only want is really, because those were classified as kind of need. So the really only want is the restroom. And so yeah, we're not talking about the boom mounted mowing head, and we're not talking about and the sidewalks on 107. We already did talk about that, and that is
Okay, so the reason I put those in there, even though that was a low priority on when you all voted with your dots, is
right.
because I'm afraid if we go 5 years without budgeting for those sidewalks, it's going to be such a huge hit to our fund balance.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I'm just trying to because now we're at that point where we got to start deciding, like, I'm just clarifying, like, the mowing head and the sign are not there. They're still not there.
Correct.
Right. So those would be things that we would have to now talk about and advocate for, or not talk about, and that kind of thing. So are we at the point now where we start talking about?
Yes, anything that's on here that is not included that you want added, now's the time to let us know. And then we need to know if you're okay with this fund balance appropriation detail. If you want to do those things, do you want to do them from fund balance, or do you want to do them
From a tax increase?
right? And then also, do you want to do a tax increase for the additional personnel?
Right.
If we do pull this from fund balance, does it put us at the right fund balance percentage to be okay with the state?
You'll still be below the state, I think.
Even with the federal grant revenue income to the fund balance?
You can't count that for reserves.
Got it.
So it seems to me on a revaluation year that where property values for some people skyrocketed, but overall 15% increase, that means people are going to be paying 15% more in taxes. I'm not willing to stomach a tax increase. I think the 107 sidewalk allocation for 20,000, I think sidewalks are a suitable allocation from the federal grant money. The restroom feasibility study, I mean, I didn't vote for that, but I mean, that's up to the board as a whole. And then the 18,000 fire department increases, I mean, that seems like a necessity. So, right, I admit that's got to come from somewhere, and as well as the pay study. But $690,000 are increase in revenue. Let's take out the 400, 290. But I know a lot of that got eaten up by the salary increase. So that it seems like the property revaluation's a wash. But I'm not going to support an increase in taxes on a reevaluation year. I know my property value, it almost doubled for some absurd reason. Went from 130 to 240. I mean, that's my take on those initial numbers.
If we entertain putting the bathrooms at the Bridge Park as well as Spring Street, can that money come from the Fisher Creek Fund?
It can come from the Fisher Creek Fund wherever you want to put them, if you all want it to come from there.
Only a certain percentage of it has to be for water quality.
Right.
I agree with you, David. I do not want a tax increase this year.
So I would like to look over the expenses spreadsheet a little closer. I mean, really, it's kind of like I kind of wish I had it and could go through all those numbers before we needed to like actually sit down and make a decision on it. But can you scroll down to it at least back to the expenses page?
And I do want to remind you that we're still really early in the budget process. So there's plenty of time to make changes. This is just the last meeting before you are required to get a balanced draft from me.
I
My
wanna put a word
recommendation.
in.
Oh, go ahead.
I would like to put a word in for that entryway sign. I think that's an important thing. And we're talking about attracting people here. We're talking about boosting the economy. We're talking about a new bridge that's coming from that side of town. I think that this is a perfect opportunity to do something like that. Not to mention that we're hiring somebody local to do it.
I think a lot of these wants, like this, like an entrance sign, and the Bryson Park improvements and the sidewalk contribution, I think those are good candidates for the 400,000. And I think it's okay for us in this initial budget or in our budget for the year to not include those things and just have that 400K go into capital funds. And we can say throughout the year, hey, let's do that. Let's like, we've had some time to process this 400,000 that's in here, and this is what we've prioritized. We want the entrance sign, and contribution to sidewalks, and pull some of those things out of our budget, because essentially we can make a mid-year budget amendment to pull those from the 400,000, right? And so I think right now maybe the most important thing we do is give you direction for like those big items that you need to know about to move ahead with the budget, which is like, do we want more police officers and sanitation employees at the expense of a tax increase? And my opinion on that is no, I don't want that a tax increase. The part-time sanitation employee, I can't remember, what did it say, 13,000? That's something maybe that I could stomach, and maybe we could squeeze in somewhere because it's a lower number. But the 60-something thousand, which will also bring up the 218 increase in the police department, is getting, I think, in a tax evaluation year where people are going to pay more in taxes. I don't want to stomach it.
So when do you want to,
Comments?
so can I jump in? Sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead. Okay. So when do you want to stomach it? So like this, what do you want to do it next year? Like, when are we gonna, like, clearly looking at this budget, this seems like just to kind of keeping the town rolling. If that even, it doesn't, this is not the kind of, budget where we start to do things to make the town better. And, we really shore up our services, whether it's, whatever department in the town, if it's underfunded, if you don't fund something like anything, it's not gonna produce as good a service. And, and like, we owe that also to the town residents to provide good services. And like that to me, that's like one of the biggest roles of the town board, is to assure that we, because that's what we do as a town, we provide services to our town. And I think that's something that we got to pay for, you get what you pay for, kind of thing.
So can I just ask, we can't use the 400,000 for staffing?
Correct.
Is there any salary savings from Rick's retirement?
Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying, Ben, and I guess like on a typical year, I would absolutely be with you, right? Because when people's property values don't change, we can very accurately say, okay, Jake needs a new sanitation employee. That's $13,000. That's the equivalent of a third of a cent on our taxes. And we can say, okay, let's raise taxes by a third of a cent, pay for that. And we know that people in our town will only pay, a third cent over 42.5 cents more in taxes, right? Like it's easy to estimate, but on a property revaluation year, it's a total wild card, right? So my property tax is going to go up a tremendous amount, and then on top of that, a tax increase, and it's hard to put that burden on people both in the same year. But yeah, you make a good point. I mean, our staff has made a case that I guess the level we're operating at is not sufficient. We are seeing $600,000. Well, I'm going to take the 400 out, but we're seeing over $200,000 worth of increase. I would feel like the critical needs for our services would be able to, like, that money would accommodate that. I'm just a little surprised and maybe a little more time to look at these expenses to really understand why it didn't.
So I'd like to hear from other board members on your opinions of what we might need to do.
Paige, I feel comfortable with you proceeding the way that you have it set now, with taking out of the fund balance and not doing a tax increase.
Can you scroll back up to the fund balance appropriation? So I guess the suggestion I would have, like, I think the part-time sanitation being 12,000, I think we can push the 107 sidewalk contribution to the $400,000 federal grant to come from that and move the part-time sanitation up to a fund balance. Well, no, you don't want to do a salary from the fund balance appropriation. I guess would be moving something else to fund balance appropriation to cover that difference.
So I don't know that we can, so this 107 sidewalk would essentially go from, as it is right now, from fund balance into the sidewalk fund. I don't know that we can do the 400,000 for that, because it would essentially be like putting it in reserves. And I'm not sure what the rules are. As I can check, but as more information comes out, I think we'll know what the rules are. And when, I'm afraid we'll have to expend those funds prior to when we pay for 107 sidewalks.
Yeah, I think that's probably the goal of the rescue plan, is to spend money, not to save money, you know, and I think that's where that's the whole idea of it, is to, you know, to get money out there.
I believe it has to be spent by 2024.
So an
Okay.
amendment is going to be inevitable then, is what you're saying, because we can't make that decision now.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, it's there. I mean, there's other things like the Polaris vehicle would probably classify in that category from the 400,000 then, right? I mean, investments in equipment costs. So, I mean, that could be taken out of a capital reserve transfer and make room for the sidewalk contribution, right? Like we still have that $400,000 fund as a buffer to shift things into. I mean, that's what we did with the first allotment, right? We put it all on the police department salary because we knew that need met it, and that freed up funds for other things. I mean, the same sort of thing can be done with the 400,000. I'm sure if we wanted to, you know, have that sidewalk contribution come from something else and shift another thing to the 400,000. That would be my recommendation.
Barbara, we haven't heard, do you have any comments? I'm sorry. There you go. You got it. Oops.
I get it that time.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I agree with what Mary brought up. I don't want a tax increase. We're between a rock and a hard place. But I still think we need to, like Ben says, we need to have services for the town also. but, trying to jiggle around where we're going to take it from. Do you have any suggestions, Linda?
My opinion is that I think we need both of the additional personnel costs. We may have to give something else up if nobody wants to raise taxes, but I definitely think those are needed for services, as Ben said.
I agree with that.
Where are you going to find $81,000 in savings without a tax increase?
Well, we'll just have to look through here. I haven't studied it to see.
But and it's $81,000 every year too. And like, this is one of these things, we get a tax. What happens 5 years from now? All of a sudden our tax assessment goes down. And but again, it's like it's like moving forward here. If we want to pay for these folks, we should just pay for them, and we're like, and what I mean, nobody wants to pay more taxes, and I understand, and it's like, and it is tough. But if you go to the town residents and they're like, I'm sorry, nobody wants to raise your taxes, but this is why we're raising your taxes. We're raising your taxes to make your services better. We have departments that are underfunded, understaffed, and also under-equipped, whether it's the boom mower or whatever. And, we will do a better job. And that's why we're raising taxes. I mean, this is a time where you can, because we need these now. That's the thing. We don't need these. I mean, if you want to punt on the staffing till next year and raise the taxes next year, then say that. But it seems like both Chris and Jake have made a compelling case, at least to me, that the staffing needs to be increased now, not a year from now. And I think we should pay for it.
Paige, can you tell me, I asked this earlier, you or Lynn, if we add those positions in, what would you see it do to the taxes? Would it be 1/4 cent, or would it be a 1/2 cent increase? It's not going to be that much, is it?
I think adding those 2 personnel would be 2 cents almost on the tax rate.
Talking about, people saw on average a 14% increase in their property value. So that's, you got the 14% and then 2 cents on 42.5. That means your property, that like you're gonna be paying almost 20% more in taxes, almost 1/5 more in taxes in 1 year. I mean, that's a lot. That's a tough year to raise taxes. And some people's property values obviously didn't go up that much. Some people's went up more. And what I'm hearing from people, like, yeah, I know, like typically, Ben, I would like to go around, and I think we can justify spending more on services in a normal year. And people will understand that. Like, yes, taxes are, what you're paying taxes are going up, but we're providing, better services to you. I think that works normally. But this year, what I'm hearing from people is, I just had the worst financial year of my life this past year, and yet my property value went up. And that is true for the average person here. It went up 15%. And on top of that, I don't think it's a good year to say, we're going to also raise your tax rate on top of that. I don't think that's it's not a good long-term solution to say that. Obviously, expenses increase every year in the town of Sylva, and we need to have more revenue. But this year, we are going to have more revenue, $690,000 more revenue. I don't think we need a tax increase on top of it. Again, I would take advantage of that $400,000, and I would move some expenses to that, like the Polaris vehicle. I'm sure we could find a few more, and make room in our budget for the sanitation employee and the sidewalk, and still not pull from fund balance. I guess that would be my recommendation.
David, thank you for bringing that part up. Nobody else has said that yet. And you said it, like, it wasn't just a reevaluation year. It was a COVID year. It was a lack of being open for a lot of our businesses that did not make their usual income. So if they look at their budgets, I'm sure they're in a lot worse position than the town of Sylva is right now.
Can I just clarify something real quick? The Polaris vehicle is being paid out of the Fisher Creek funds. So it's not like we could subtract that out of what you're looking at here. It's coming out of an entirely different fund.
All right, I thought it was coming out of the capital reserve. But, I mean, if we had that, you know, when we get more into the detailed budget and we have the line item breakdown of expenses, I mean, I'd like to see that and see if we could find something. I mean, that 400,000 is a good buffer. I mean, that's a good thing that we can take advantage of on top of the $200,000, $290,000 increase in other revenues.
Question: what is the average? Like, what kind of the average property tax paid to the town of Sylva? I guess is, you know,
That's our next slide.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you,
Like, how
Amanda,
much
for
is this?
creating
What is
this.
this? Because we talk about 15%. I mean, like, what kind of money is this? Are we talking about for the average person?
Okay, so what I've done here on this spreadsheet is to take the current estimated values that we have from the county for 2021 compared to the 2016 estimated values we were given to show you by residential, commercial, and personal what the difference would be. Taking those numbers and converting them to revenue for the current estimated 2021, you can see that 2 million or so dollars. So what I did below that was I took and added 1, 2, and 3 cents to show you what the per increase revenue would be. Okay, so you know, a penny roughly between $46,000 and $48,000, 2 pennies roughly 95, 3 pennies 143,000. Okay, so to break that down as an impact on the taxpayer, you look at home values, and these are just merely even numbers, you know, to see. You can see what a 1 cent, 2 cent, and 3 cent tax increase do. So in the town of Sylva, the average home, now this doesn't include residential or commercial or anything like that. This is just the average residential home in the city limits is $171,500 value. In 2016, it was right at $162,000. So an additional penny on the tax rate for the average homeowner would be $17 a year onto their tax bill. An additional 2 cents would be $34 on top of their tax bill. So breaking this down, we thought it would be easier for you to see, you know, to help make the decision of whether or not you wanted to proceed. So any questions or?
No, but that was very helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. So to add to the numbers, also consider town of Sylva residents also pay the county taxes, and 15% property value increase is equivalent of a 6 cent tax increase already. I think I did that math right.
But we need to look at like you know, how much if we're going to raise taxes, how much town of Sylva residents extra on top of whatever. And I think that's the thing we should focus on too. Like, you know, because $17, this is $17 a year, sorry, right? So it's in order to have, you know, have both Jake and Chris's departments fully staffed, like they're requesting, it's going to cost the average person, what, 30, I mean, I guess we're talking 2 cents. So we're saying $30 a month or $30 a year, $34 a year extra to staff these understaffed departments.
On top of the $108 a year they're going to pay extra already. That's my point. So yeah, a 1 cent tax increase is $17 On average, people are seeing a 6.375 cent tax increase. So that is going to result in $108 more this year they're going to pay than last year. I think I'm doing this math right. So I agree, 17 isn't much. But that's on top of what they're paying. Going to be paying more this year on average. That's a big shock in 1 year is my point.
So
But
as
I
a
am
result of the revaluation, will we be receiving more county money? I guess we might have seen that in the previous slide, but how does that work?
Meg?
Did you hear me?
No, it cut in and out.
So I'm just wondering, since we are having a 15% reevaluation increase, are we going to see additional revenue from the county from that? And was that taken into account?
No, I don't think there will be additional money other than what increased value brings. If I'm understanding the question.
Well, it just goes back to like the county allocating money to the municipalities in the county. Are we going to see a revenue increase as a result of this reevaluation?
No.
And I have a quick question. So
we do.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Dave. Oh, I
Go
was just
ahead,
gonna say,
Ben.
typically, or when we have raised taxes in the past, when is it we typically raise taxes?
In 2016, it was during a revaluation year.
Where it went down, where the valuation went down.
Lynn, can you remember other times outside of revaluation years that the tax rate has been adjusted?
For the majority of the time, it has been during a reevaluation year. There was 1 year that I recall that was the year before the reevaluation year, but that's been a long time ago.
And reevaluation years don't always go down. They typically go up, correct?
I think before the 2016 tax increase, taxes hadn't been increased in Sylva in quite a while. And now it's been 5 years.
I mean, to me, a growth in property values, that is a tax increase as far as it's concerned for us, right? It's like we raised taxes 6 cents, if I did my math right, 5 cents, something like that this year because of the revaluation. And I know we increased it last time because our property valuation went down, and we did it to maintain a revenue neutral rate. I mean, is that, I guess that's the debate we're having. Some people are willing to increase the taxes this year to cover those additional requests.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm saying. It's like the tax, because of reevaluation, things are going to go up, but the services are not going to go up. Like, so that's something to keep in mind. So the services are still going to be underfunded. And so you got, how I see it, you got to look at it's going to cost the average homeowner in Sylva $34 more on top of the reevaluations. And I understand that's like that, you're going to have to combine those things in the year. But what I'm saying is like, you're going to pay an extra $34 for these, what I feel are needed services. And so that's, so it's the extra $34 I'm really focusing on, but I completely understand your point, David. That's like on top of something else, but we're paying for more, you're paying an extra $34 so you can have fully staffed departments.
Well, one thing I would like to see in terms of the police department, if we were to increase taxes, is how do we improve the quality of life for the officers? I know that they are stretched, and I would also like to see some innovation in the way that those services are provided. We mentioned diversity training in the meeting just now, and I think that is an excellent start. But there are lots of ways out there that I think, could make our police department more streamlined and better equipped to deal with the quality of life issues that it seems like we're having in that department.
Also note the with the pay increase last year, we did increase Sylva PD budget about 100,000 from the merit increase. So I'm hoping that helps too, right? Like we did increase services in this budget, right? I mean, yes, the initial budget doesn't include increase in personnel, but the town of Sylva is spending $600,000 more, or excuse me, 200 something thousand dollars more if you take out the 400 than we did last year. Something should have increased. We've done something better with that money, right?
Well, some things we're just replacing stuff that needs to get replaced, like that big the police cars or whatever, that's part of our, I mean, how I see it, and Paige, correct me if I'm wrong, is like, any of these increases we're not adding anything to this budget. We're just like, we're not adding any more real services. We're just kind of paying what we would normally be paying. Is that correct?
Correct. And David, one reason that 200,000 looks so much larger is because we're paying for patrol cars out of the police budget instead of out of capital reserves.
Yeah, I see. That's the 92,000 on that. That's 92,000 of that. I got it.
Can you remind me, next year, are we going to be replacing 2 police cars also, or are we on what's our rotation?
I can't remember if next year is either 2 or 3. I think it's 2.
Would it be 3 if we added an additional officer? I see Lynn shaking her head, but I see Linda shaking her head.
I think what we said is it would be, if we added 2 additional officers, it would.
I think we said
We said we would wait to surplus 1.
Right. I think if we added 2 this year, we'd have to buy another vehicle also. But if we add an officer at some point, we're going to have to add to our vehicle replacement schedule, right? Would
At
that be
some
next
point,
year?
yes, it will add another vehicle down the road.
I mean, I'm with you, Ben. I want to increase services in Sylva. That's sort of been my goal the entire time I've been on this board. I'm not convinced this year is the right year to do it. And I'm, not convinced that these are the right ways to do it. I think there's a lot of things that the town of Sylva needs, including sidewalks on Chipper Curve, code enforcement officers, a litter pickup person part-time, fixing Bryson Park. Like, I just, what's being proposed here, and given our property value increase, I don't like it.
So these are the priorities too that the board identified, and it's like, I don't know. I'm not speaking for Chris and Jake, and they're welcome to jump in, but those guys work really hard, and you and we talked about it the other day. I was riding my bike home at 7 a.m. coming home from work, and and there's Jake driving the street sweeper, and like these guys bend over backwards for the town. And their departments just get stretched. And, this is one of the reasons you start to get morale to go down when people are getting called in on their days off all the time. And, they're going to do the job because we've got really healthy, good departments. And the reason we have those departments, we have, going back to Paige, hiring good people. And then we talked about it, keeping good people. But if you start to stretch them, people are going to be, why am I doing this? And, that's when morale starts to go down, and you get into these terrible, vicious, these spirals here. And I think it's much better to get out in front of this than than afterwards. And I think an extra $34 a year to do that, to keep these excellent departments excellent, is worth it.
And I might add that some of the police turnover might be from those things, that they just get tired of missing days off or whatever. So they move on to another place to work.
I agree with you, Linda. Can you hear me?
Yes. Now we can't. There you go.
Okay, I agree with you. I worked at the hospital and I worked ungodly hours, and I can understand how these officers feel right now, the men and the women. If there's vacations, if they're lucky to get a vacation, everybody in that office has to work on their days off. We have lost so many officers within the last couple years because they can go to Waynesville, they can go to Asheville, they can go to other places and have some benefits and know that they can have time off with their families. I'm not for tax increase, but my goodness, if you were in their spot, how would you feel if you had to do that every single day? And they are here to protect us. And if it means a little more money, I know it's not popular, but I think we need to fund at least one officer.
All
Sounds
right.
like you got two board members that support a tax increase. And I guess you just need to know, yeah, does the majority support it for your plan moving forward? I'm a no.
I'm a no.
I'm also a no.
Well, there you go.
Are we voting?
No, we cannot vote.
We're just
We're
giving
giving-
direction. She can, I mean, Paige, you can still include alternatives, moving forward, but as you refine numbers, but it sounds like the majority of the board doesn't want the additional police officer.
Can I hear from?
No, what I heard from you just now, David, is you said no to a tax increase.
No to a
Wait,
tax increase,
wait.
sorry.
Okay. Before we can't make any decisions here, but I'd like to see if Chris or Jake want to say anything. Chris, do you have? Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I promised myself I was going to try to stay as quiet as possible today. But so one thing I'd like to say is that I really hate that it's sort of, the citizens versus employees back and forth, because it's hard for citizens to get a tax increase. It's also hard for my officers if we don't get a tax increase. And I just yesterday pulled a few numbers. It just hit me. I wish I'd have thought of this a lot sooner, but I didn't. We had last year 620 hours an officer stayed past the time to go home, and that's to get the work done that was assigned to them during the shift. And we only do that for serious situations. Little small reports can wait, and we end up, our officers are getting up over 1,000 hours of overtime in a year. And so we need staffing, but I also completely understand the argument about a tax increase. But just, I would definitely, my folks are tired, and this didn't just happen this year. This didn't just happen last year. It's been growing since the last time we got a staff increase. And so I just keep that in mind. And of course, we're going to respect anything that the board does.
Can you put a dollar amount on 1,000 hours of overtime?
I don't think you don't want me to. I would try, but Amanda may be able to do that. I can say it's probably 40. I'm going to say 40,000. And Amanda's probably the person to talk to about that better than me.
So
Well,
Chris,
that's-
you've been short 2 officers, one just for a month, but one since November.
Just since November, we've been fully staffed nearly the whole year.
Okay. And so some of those overtime hours have occurred because you've had short staff too.
I guess about a month's worth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but
the
that's,
majority of that overtime is definitely, that's overtime being generated at fully staffed. Well,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, without missing officers.
yeah. And I'd like to say there is 0 times that I call in off like extra officers, like, hey, I'd like to have, 3 people come in today and work traffic enforcement or, run speeding tickets or something. That never happens. We don't have it like that. Every one of those hours has been to maintain minimum staffing or to cover a shift because somebody had to go to training or a vacation or something like that. So that's, like I said, it's kind of, I see both sides, but as the leader of this agency, like I say, when I tell you 620 hours, that's for the people have had to stay past their time to go home. That tells you how busy we are, that they're not able to get it all done by the time they're finished and they have to stay over longer. So either way, but like I said, we completely respect the board. You guys got a tough decision ahead of you, but I would tell you, this is not something that just happened all of a sudden. This has been growing and growing and growing for many years, the demand.
Well, that information is new to me, and I don't really, I mean, that much overtime justifies a position to me.
And Greg, if I could say, I'm sorry that I didn't get that to you sooner. Obviously, I think I agree with you. I think that makes a great argument for the point here. But just to be totally honest with you, I just didn't really think of it until just recently. And I apologize for that. If I would have thought of it, I promise you I would have gotten you the numbers.
Well, and Chris was scrambling to get it together yesterday, but I asked him to wait to send it out until it had been reviewed and finalized. So I'm sorry that you all didn't get it last night.
Yeah, and I got to tell you one more thing, and then I'll stop, I promise. But since I've been here, I've worked many night shifts. As we're doing the patrol officer job, I've had to been on many calls. I've seen lots of you folks on while I'm on calls. One day last week, we had a situation where our second and third, probably highest paid folks here were having to take calls, and it's because there was nobody else available to cover the shifts that were vacant. And so that's not good use of money, and I understand that, but it's the best we can do in that situation. So that, like I said, that's why we're open for at least one officer. I gave you guys the study, an independent study that said we need a lot more. And when I got that report, I read it, and I thought, oh, that's a lot of money. I mean, I understand the burden. I understand it is not easy. I've been part of these meetings before, and I know there's not just a stack of money sitting around, waiting to find something to spend it on. I'm aware of that. So I saw that and I thought, well, gosh, I don't disagree with the study results, but I know that that's not really a possibility. So, and that's why, like I said, that's why we asked for 2 and hoping for 1.
Thank you for that information, Chris. Jake, did you have anything?
A little more of the same. I just like to point out that we are, we're providing the services that we're responsible for providing currently, but we're doing it on the backs of our good, loyal employees. The burnout that Ben talks about, just general morale. It hasn't been an issue in my department. I'm exceedingly proud of my guys. But I told you in the last work session, we're picking up 240 tons of additional solid waste. That's only household garbage. That doesn't include recycling. That doesn't include brush. We're talking about adding roads. We're talking about adding bicycle trails. As the town grows, these departments are going to have to grow. If not this year, then eventually it's going to be inescapable. I'm responsible for 8 or 9 budgets. I know I have a very good idea what the overall fiscal snapshot of the town looks like. I'm not asking for something just to be asking for it. I would not be asking for this position if it wasn't really, really needed. It's y'all's budget. I appreciate your consideration. And I don't find myself, I'm not envious of the decision you have to make. I feel like you've all made really, really good points. But the requests are extremely valid, speaking from a public works standpoint. So that's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Jake. Chris.
Well, just real quick, just thought of something that those numbers I gave you are an average of the last, I think, 3 years. Those the hours, overtime hours that I was telling you about. It's an average of the last 3 years. So it's not just this past year. And I think I might have misspoke and said that. So make sure I'm clear about that. But I agree with Jake. One of the questions that was asking me was, well, what service isn't getting provided now? And that was hard. That was a hard question. And I had to really do some thinking about it. And then it kind of hit me. I thought, well, there's not one service that's not happening. It's kind of like a really busy day at work. When you get done, the job got done, but it was on the backs of just what Jake said. It was on the backs of some hardworking people who are working harder than probably what they should have. And if it was an every now and then thing, that's totally understandable. That's what jobs. I mean, that's how it goes. But it's not an everyday. It's not an every other day thing. It's nearly every day.
Okay, thank you both. I'd like to kind of poll the board again to see if you would change your mind after hearing some of those numbers, to see if that you would vote for a small tax increase or just let Paige and Lynn go with things like they are.
I want to ask a question about, is property tax the only tax that is an option? I mean, is there any other sales tax? Is there any other tax that could be altered?
That's our main funding mechanism. I mean, sales tax will increase based on trends. So that may increase or it could decrease the next year. But pretty much we're looking at funding it with a tax increase because I don't think that our budget can absorb additional personnel.
There is the option, Mary, just to, not that I'm proposing this, but we also have the authority to charge an occupancy tax of, I think the legislature gave us 2% that the town of Sylva could charge. And there's also the municipal special district, which is not really, I don't think, useful in our case, but there is occupancy taxes.
I feel like a lot of our traffic is not necessarily the residential, because we don't have more growth happening. People have been home more this year, but their incomes haven't changed necessarily, but our traffic count has changed with tourism. Some of the responsibilities of the police have increased. I just want to be more creative in where we look for that income besides just property tax alone.
I wanted to mention one thing. Just a reminder, pre-COVID last year, we basically lost $65,000 in interest revenue. And I mean, eventually, hopefully that will come up, but that's a pretty big chunk of money right there, in addition to the sales tax, which is coming in good right now. But there is a $65,000 loss from the prior year that we were receiving interest income.
Thank you.
But
Anything
just to say
else?
that money also, like, that changes with that's your interest. That means interest rates have to go up, and interest
Correct.
rates are not going to go up unless the Fed decides inflation or and needs to bring throttle down the economy, which is probably not going to happen for some time.
Any other comments? I mean, we've been here for a long, long time today, but it is a very serious thing. It's our budget for the next year and the possibility of being short-staffed once again. And from what I heard from Lynn, you don't usually do a tax increase anytime except a reval year. So
I just have a comment, and Chris, I'm not trying to micromanage the police department, but I'm hearing from lots of people almost daily about the need for sensitivity training CIT officer, somebody who's trained in mental health. And I know that those kinds of things cost more. But since we are starting to have, it sounds like, a discussion about the quality of the service, not just the service itself, those are the kinds of issues that that people are coming to me with. They're concerned about the tenor of a small southern town in terms of a diversity. And so I think I would vote for a tax increase if there was maybe some funding in there for advanced training or something like that.
Can I answer back, Greg? I'm a teammate with you there. I don't think you'll find another police chief anywhere close to here that has done the things that I've done already to show you that I'm a teammate there. We want the best modern police department we can have, and so I'm open to any kind of discussion like that. And our officers have been to de-escalation training and diversity and CIT. We're just waiting on COVID restrictions to lighten up enough. That's one of the first phone calls I made when I came here. So I'm absolutely a teammate with you there.
And that's what I've heard from the people that I've met with. And so I just wanted to reiterate it to the board that there's a large concern about nonviolent crime, about drugs, about how we're dealing with mental health issues in the street. And I don't know what the difference is between an officer who is trained in those things, and is there a category shift from one to the other? Does one cost $69,000 and one costs $100,000? I don't know.
Greg, I'll tell you, everybody that I meet with, when we're finished meeting, they're always so surprised to learn the difference between Sylva Police and other agencies. We're already doing so much of that stuff. The trick is getting folks to know that. But yeah, we're way ahead of the curve, I'll just say.
And
Yeah,
Chris,
I was encouraged by your report today.
And Chris, the question, and then I'm assuming that all those trainings, that takes man hours. So that means that in order for someone to go into a training, they got to have someone actually to cover while they're in that training, and that adds up over the year.
Yeah, we have minimum staffing, and so it's, if somebody is gone on a day when they work, I mean, somebody else has to work on their day off to fill that shift. 12 hours. We do have a reserve officer who comes in and works quite a bit, and we use him very often. And we've tried to get more reserve officers. That's part of my plan, but I'm having a hard time finding full-time officers, much less reserve officers.
Okay. Greg, did I hear you say you would change your vote if?
I think I would change my vote. I don't want the quality of the service to decrease in Sylva. And from what I'm hearing from the chief, is that they're working towards a lot of the issues that are coming before me. So didn't know that. Overtime figure, that's disturbing, to spend that much money on overtime when we could just be hiring another person. So yes, I'll change my vote.
So I have some questions about this overtime first. So, I mean, obviously, an officer is not sitting at home in their plain clothes and you guys get a call and they have to suit up and get in their patrol car and answer a emergency call. Like, these are planned overtimes that are called in ahead of time due to, like you said, training and being down. I mean, 2 officers, 1 officer fairly regularly. How does adding more staff, which results in more training, and still being short officers, like, how does that solve the overtime problem as opposed to other solutions, like, things that the current officers would maybe help with retention, like better pay and like the increases we gave this last year?
Is that question for me, Dave?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
asking me. So,
Yeah. I mean, right. Does adding more officers reduce the overtime that's a result of training? And, I know y'all like to have 3 people, on patrol at any time. Are you calling people in to maintain that number? Because when I look at, statistics from dispatch, there hasn't been an increase in crime. So I'm wondering why the increase in actions and number of officers needed.
well, interpretation of those numbers is a whole nother thing. Sometimes if you don't know what you're looking at, you may not interpret them exactly right. But so we have 3 people on night shift and 2 people on day shift, but that's not the minimum staffing number. The minimum staffing is 2 officers working at the same time. So when I say minimum staffing, that's what I'm talking about. 2 people, 2 officers working. As far as that's a pretty deep question that you asked me, and something I'd like to do a little more thinking on than just right now. But I think that sometimes there are times we call people in. When we have an example is in Ben's neck of the woods there the other day, our waves got a little bigger than our boat, and we actually did have to call folks in to help us get it done. I mean, when you've only got a few people here, there's a lot of jobs that have to get done. I think goodness for the sheriff's office helped us that day. But there are times, a good example, Saturday night, we had several of us had to come in and help with a situation because 2 people can only do so much. And so that does happen quite often. But what percentage of the time is that? It'd be hard to say. It'd be a lot less than whenever we're having to cover shifts, the minimum staff. But my first reaction to you would be we would have 1 extra person to be able to work some of those hours. And while I agree with you that they would possibly be making overtime as well, it's 1 more chess piece to put on the table to help kind of fill the gaps. And like I say, something I'd have to give a little thought to, but that's my initial reaction.
So like in those events where you've had to call in somebody, town residents also pay county taxes, which fund the sheriff's department. Why not just call in a sheriff's deputy?
They're already there. But before we're calling in people from home, we've already got generally sheriff's office helping us, or as many as they can spare. You got to remember they've got a whole county, and they generally only have about as many people. They'll have probably, I think, I'm saying probably 4 on duty for 5 for the whole county, and so they have higher call volume than we do, and so they're generally pretty busy as well. But we use the sheriff's office a lot, and the sheriff's office, they use us. We help each other quite a bit, kind of like a give and take. Thank goodness. So generally there are sheriff's office. Example, the Saturday night I told you about, the sheriff's office helped us with that, but it still wasn't enough.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
I just wanted to say, I wanted to jump in here. Like, again, I just want to go back to this, Chris is department head and Jake is department head, and that's their job and they understand it. And they know how much staffing they need, and they know again, maybe I don't want to speak for them, but I get the impression it's like they wouldn't be coming to the board and saying we need more staffing if they really didn't need more staffing. And if we want to have a discussion to figure out, is there a more cost-effective way to police town of Sylva, or is there a more cost-effective way to do public works, then I think that's fine. But I don't think that this is the forum to kind of sort through that. I think we have to trust our department heads and listen to them and say, when they tell us they're understaffed, that they need to provide these services and they need this many people to provide them.
Thank you.
True,
And
but
go ahead.
I just need to make them aware that these are the current concerns of the people of the town that are coming to me. So I don't know where the appropriate forum is, but during a budget discussion about doing another officer, a lot of the concerns that I'm having are sort of, why do we need more cops? And I understand why we need more cops because I'm in this meeting, but you also have to listen to your constituents and figure out what they need and what they want. So, and maybe this isn't the forum for that. And like I said, I don't want to micromanage you. I just want you to be aware, and all of us to be aware that these are the concerns that the citizens are coming to me with.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg. And I want to hear about those as they come to you. I always want to hear what those are. But, before COVID, we were doing, I'm sure you may have been to some of them, I don't remember, but we were doing meetings with folks, talking with people pretty regular, and COVID restrictions kind of squashed us on that. And Zoom is just not the same. And so hopefully as the restrictions lift, we can get back on schedule to what we were doing before.
Thank you all. Let me ask this. Well, there's two things we could do. I would like to see if we could just say to Paige and them to work on the budget and add everything we've talked about, including the personnel, and come back to us with some numbers so we can see what that is. If everybody's in agreement with that, or at least if the majority of the board is in agreement with that.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're not voting, we're just polling, right? Like we're,
Yes.
you know, I'm not voting either way. I'm saying I'm willing to entertain it.
Is that enough for you, Paige? I'm sorry.
Sorry. So that's 3 that are willing to entertain this with building on this budget with more personnel.
Right.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, so just to be clear, if there's no other funding for another officer and another public works, we either got to pay for them or we don't get them. I just want to make sure that's clear. That we're not going to pull them out of the hat. That's like, if we want another officer and another public works employee, we're going to have to raise taxes and pay for them. I just want to make that clear.
Yes.
I think we could potentially pull an extra sanitation employee out of that hat, reworking things in the budget, because it's a low dollar amount.
Well, what we just suggested was let them put that in there and let's see, and maybe there's a way to find other monies there, or there would be some other solutions. But it's after 2:00. I had one little bar that was like breakfast. I would like some lunch, and I'm sure people need to get to work. But what I'm hearing, that 3 people would be willing to look at that. So are you, Paige and Amanda and Lynn, are y'all okay with that? Will you get that to us? And can individual members send you, look at the budget and see if there's any ways to make changes to that?
Yes. Send us any ideas or questions that you have. And then as we get them, we'll answer them to everyone. And this part on the American Rescue Plan that I had, we'll just email you this set of slides.
Thank you.
That would be
Yeah,
good.
definitely look into the Mary's suggestions, and maybe we could just have to do a 1 cent instead of a 2 cent. I don't know.
Yeah. Maybe we can find creative ways, or maybe Lynn and Amanda and Paige can, to get us a little bit more money. That's not a lot when you consider our budget. So
Would you mind sending out the line item revenue expense spreadsheet?
Of course.
Thanks.
yes, I would like that. And we haven't gotten what was on these slides, have we?
No.
Could we have that too? I was having a hard time reading some of those.
Yes, absolutely. We'll send you all this.
Okay. Thank you all very much for being here and doing this. This is a very hard thing to do. And I appreciate everybody's time and comments. So let's, I'll entertain a motion now, I think, for us to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mary. Amanda, can you poll the board?
Barbara,
Yes.
David?
Yep.
Ben,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Greg?
Yep.
Thank you.